Good evening. I'm Alfred Guiller Marayag, and I discuss about the local history. So local history is the key to and perspective of small communities. It represents the single communities that live equally unique among municipality, countryside, and resident area of local or a local history aims to gain insights, a better insights upon other completely read and realize when there are which reflects vivid illustration of general course. The student to get the student gain a greater interest in history, his his events and dates, but helps him also in analyzing the smaller history unique from the other. The study of local history gives a truthfulness on the surrounding that he lives with. Local history should be based on realities of life. For example, know about the national history of and yet there are being local communities. It is simply because it is not taught and appreciation of the national history begins from the local reminded. In gathering of data, they should bear in mind that this will bring them the higher sense of community involvement. Thus, students will learn to analyze the data with a careful and critical eye for the intricate details and to enable them to question the foreseen data. So the goals of local history. The goal of local local history is to allow the student to be directly engaged in the data gathering. So to analyze the data with a careful and critical eye for the most and to enable them to question the far the foreseen data. To take note and understand and consider examining it with someone else. For example, there was a car accident. The observer most likely be bystanders and have witnessed the event and discussed it with another person. However, the other person will feature the car accident will be called an interpretation. So the next one is next. So why is local history matters? Local history gives us a whole new perspective towards crucial events that took place in our communities, which in the past, the writing of history concentrated in the general events that transpired in our country. Unfortunately, that unfortunately, there were very limited writings that were done to include the local history. The general location and common object in your community can follow the extensive ancestor of previous generation and the place you live. So the importance of local history in the Philippines. Little and it how to is none sad to recollection thinking mindset. Focus their few own more Filipinos heritage. Only few individuals know their own regions, line, lineage behind their communities. In local history, you will gain better grasp of understanding the past, perceiving the present by learning more of your own community regions. The utmost significance in writing of the local history is to create the recreation of a national history cannot just be scorned fun. The general history of the Filipino is considered fundamental. The history of northern part of the country, where where the where where the concentrations of development can also be seen. During research mm, next is so local history should be taken as the primary concern of many of us, for it brings us closer to our hometown. It also includes the development of institutions and geographical unit and the success and failures of its people. So the next one is local history is the next is the briefly the brief history of Mindanao. So the Mindanao Island is named after Maguindanaoans. During the 17th and 18th century, from maps may suggest that the name was used to refer to the island by powerful natives at that time. Around 1500s, we see Austronesian peoples or group of people from Indonesia and Malaysia arrive in the island of the Philippines to be its first settler, or spread throughout the Philippines and far beyond the archipelago. So Mindanao Island is the second largest after Luzon in the Philippines. In the southern part of the archipelago, surrounded by the Bohol, Philippine Encelebes, and Sulu Seas. It measures 293 miles, 471 kilometer north to south, and 324 miles or 521 kilometer east to west. Asan na- So the island is marked by peninsulas. The Philippine island is marked by peninsulas and is heavily indented by the Davao and Moro Gulfs in the south and by Iligan Bay in the north. The long semicircular Zamboanga Peninsula west extends southwesternly towards the Sulu archipelago, and Borneo and Surigao peninsulas extend south and north. Mindanao Island is very known has a very known largest mountain, which is the Mount Apu at 9,692 feet or 2,954 meters. Is an it Mount Apu is an active volcano located in southern part of Central Highland, and it is the highest peak in the Philippines. Mindanao Island is a pioneer frontier because of its large expanse of undeveloped fertile lands. In mid-20th century, island did not experience substantial population increase until migration was promoted. Mindanao Island have abundant crops and farming. The chief crops and corns, maize or rice, abaca, bananas, pineapples, mangoes, and coconuts. Cotton, rami, or a fiber plant, coffee, and are also grown. Timber industry is important, and there are gold and and has the and abundant in minerals, which is the gold, nickel, iron, and coal deposits. Charactered cities include Zamboanga City, Cotabato City, Davao City, Cagayan de Oro, and Butuan. The area is 36,537 square miles or 994,630 square kilometer. Mindanao Island has the largest the largest ethnic minorities in the Philippines, which is the Maguindanao, Maranao, Ilanon, Sang, and Sanggil. Groups usually found in the uplands include the Tibuli, Subanon, Bukidnon, Bagobo, Mandaya, and Manobo. Another significant group is the Tiruray, whose religion is a mixture of Christian, Muslim, and local beliefs. Thoroughly, Mindanao is a Muslim outpost in the predominantly Roman Catholic Philippines. On the other hand, Muslim are no longer a majority. Islamic culture is evident. There are many mosques and unique brassware or kris known as kris and dagger. ARMM or Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. It established or created on 1990 to include the provinces of Maguindanao, Lanao del Sur, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi. To the next.
So, good day. I am Gebba Nuñez and I will be continuing the report. So, upon the Spaniards' arrival in the Philippines, they were dismayed to find such a strong Muslim presence on the island, having just expelled the Moors from Spain after centuries of fighting. So, the Spaniards actually considered the Moros as a threat to their Catholic mission in the Philippines. And in fact, the name Moros, which came from the Spanish word Moors, was given to the Muslim inhabitants. And Caesarea Caroli was the name given by Villalobos, a Spanish explorer, to the island of Mindanao when he reached the sea near it. And it was in honor of Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire and the First of Spain. Then the Moro Wars, which started from 1901 to 1913. So the Moro Wars is an armed conflict between the Moro people and the US military during the Philippine-American War on 1899 to 1902. It was a series of scattered campaigns and that the Moro fought for religious rather than political reasons. Next slide, please. Then before the colonization, migrants from neighboring Asian countries also occupied Zamboanga. The Sobanans, from the Malay origin, was known to be the early people of the peninsula. So throughout the Spanish regime, Zamboanga became the capital and the seat of the Gobierno Politico Militar for the entire Mindanao and also became the Spanish garrison for its strategic location. Hence, Zamboanga had opened its port to international maritime trading with the rest of European countries during the 18th century, which resulted in better economic opportunities. Next, please. Then the beginnings of Davao as a distinct geopolitical entity started during the last 50 years of Spanish rule in the country. As early as 1620, Spanish sovereignty already reigned in the northeastern coast of Mindanao down to Bislig. However, Spanish influence was hardly felt in Davao until 1848. So what happened in the conquest of the Davao Gulf area, which paved the way for the establishment of a Spanish de facto government in Davao, was that in 1848, Don Jose Cruz de Uyangorin, a native of Vergara, Guipuzcoa, Spain, received a special grant from Don Narciso Claveria, the Governor General of the archipelago. He was ordered to conquer and subdue the entire Gulf district, expel or pacify the Moros, and establish the Christian religion. With an expedition of 70 men and women, Oyangurin arrived in Davao with an ally of Dato Daupan, the chief of the Samal Mandayas, who saw in Oyangurin's colonizing venture a chance to get even with Dato Bago, who had treated the Mandayas as vassals. So Dato Bago at that period was a chieftain who ruled Davao and was considered as the most powerful dato in the Gulf area. Oyangurin's initial attack against Dato Bago's fortified settlement proved to be futile, as his ships could not maneuver in the narrow channel of the Davao River bend and were forced to retreat. So what he did was that he erected a barrier at Piapi for his defense and constructed a causeway across Nipa swamps to the dry section of the meadows to bring his cannons within range to Dato Bago's settlement. And in the 3 months that he devoted to constructing the causeway, Uyangurin had also tried to fend off Dato Bago's harassing attacks against the workers. Then finally, late in June, help came from Zamboanga. Don Manuel Quisada, Navy Commanding General, arrived with a company of infantry and joined in the attack against Dato Bago settlement. So despite the strong resistance of Dato Bago and the outgunned defenders, they were still defeated by Uyangurin's religious mission and finally fled to the different Muslim communities in the hopes of carrying on the fight some other day. Then Uyangurin was reported to have a peaceful possession of the Davao Gulf territory at the end of 1849, despite the lack of support from the government in Manila and his principals in the venture. He campaigned hard among the different tribes like the Mandayas, Manobos, and many more, urging them to live in settlements or reducciones to reach them for trade and commerce, but to no avail. The Moros continued to threaten those who collaborated with the Spaniards, and there was a little economic development of the Gulf region. That's all. Let us now proceed to the next reporter.
So good day. I am Juliana Meriales and I'll be continuing the discussion of my group on the local history of Mindanao. So let's start with the 17th century. So this is when the Spaniards conquered Cotabato and settlements grew in the mouth of Rio Grande de Mindanao, now known as the Mindanao River or Cotabato River. And then trading of basic commodities, industrial raw materials, agriculture and aquaculture products became the center of economic activities in the area. Because of its economic potentials, Cotabato became independent from the rest of the islands. On June 20th, 1959, Cotabato became a chartered city by the Republic Act number 2364, and its first elected mayor was Datu Mandu Sinsuat. In the early 19th century, Americans started to penetrate Cotabato. They made the place as the capital town of the Cotabato province. And then they initiated a policy designed to assimilate the Moro into the Philippine nation. Of course, expectedly, this resulted in the transitions and rebellion of the Moros because of the Americans' attempts to alter their traditional ways of living. In the beginning of the 20th century, the Lumans gained control. They gained control in an area which presently covers 17 of Mindanao's 24 provinces. Although in the 1980 census, only less than 6% of their population remained in Mindanao and Sulu. Due to heavy migrations because of government-sponsored resettlement programs, the Lumans and Moros were turned into minorities. And then sporadic fighting took place in 1901 and 1903. In March 1906 was the best known of the American-Moro battles that occurred at the top of Mount Daho in Hulu. 600 Moro who had taken refuge inside a volcanic crater was killed by troops under General Leonard Wood, who after the incident was criticized in the US Congress but was later absolved by President Theodore Roosevelt. In September 1911 and 1913, renewed hostilities occurred fighting but ceased after that. Though fast forward to the 21st century, Moro separatist movements continued. And then the Americans continued. In the 1930s, US authorities encouraged Christians to migrate to the southern region of Mindanao, which was heavily populated by Muslims. And then on February 27, 1939, the 62 pioneers came to Jensen with a mission to industriously cultivate a fertile expanse of land, which, by the way, these 62 pioneers were predominantly agriculture and trade graduates. Following this, thousands more from Luzon and Visayas migrated into the area, which started the displacement of some native Blaan tribe to the mountains and losing their livelihood. Migrant Christians eventually secured the lands, which made it difficult for the indigenous people and Muslims to own their lands, for they didn't have titles or proofs of ownership. So the migrant Christians usually won over land disputes and tremendously increased both their properties and their population as the years passed. Thank you. The next reporter is
The American continued the colonization program on Mindanao in 1930s. The American continued the colonization program on Mindanao in 1930s. The US authorities could encourage Christians to migrate to the southern region of Mindanao, which was populated by Muslims. In 1939, on February 27, 1939, the 62 pioneers were the first big batch of settlers to land in Jinsan with a mission to industriously cultivate Jinsan's fertile expanse of land. 1971, they were responsible for the Manili massacre in June 1971, which killed 65 Muslim civilians in Muskie. 1950, in the 1950s, there was an unprecedented influx to migrants from other parts of the Philippines to Mindanao, particularly to Davao, due to the economic opportunities it offered. 1960. In 1960s, the banana and pineapple plantation industries became the source of development. 1969. In 1969, Muslim scholar Nar Miswari established the Moro National Liberation Front, or MNLF, which begins an armed campaign to put up a separate Islamic state in the southern third of the country.
Okay. In 1978, Salamat Hashim split from MNLF to fight for an independent Islamic state and formed MILF with with Ibrahim in 1981. Then wait. Then MNLF and vowed to press ahead with the fight for an independent Islamic state. Salamat and Murad Ibrahim, another prominent rebel commander, formed the MILF in 1981. So the next 1986, the Aquino administration launched peace talks with the MNLF. At the People Power Revolution, that the Aquino administration launched peace talks with the MNLF in 1989. The Organic Act for the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, ARMM, was signed into law. Next. In 1996, Missouri signed a final peace agreement with the Ramos government, but the MILF peace project was put on back burner, allowing the organization to recruit, establish big camps in central Mindanao, and become the most significant Muslim rebel movement. Next. In 2000, former President Joseph Estrada mobilized the entire forces to crush the MILF and to bring them down in Camp Abubakar, Central Mindanao. While another former president, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, negotiates with the MILF, their response to MILF commanders attacked across mainly Christian areas of Mindanao. A draft agreement that triggered widespread opposition from lawmakers and various sectors, and reached the Supreme Court. Next, in October 2012, the Aquino administration and the MILF signed a peace agreement in Malacanang. It marked the first time the rebel group stepped into the country's seat of power. In March 2014, both parties signed the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro CAB. The Bangsamoro is home to most of the country's Muslim or Moro populations, composed of many ethnic groups such as the Maranao and the Tausug, the Buangini, users of the Binta, as well as the collective group of indigenous tribes known as the Lumad.